Hi everybody, I'm Zilla Blitz and welcome. Today we're going to do an overview of Purple Haze from Phalanx. Now this game is about the US experience in the Vietnam War, and it's a combination of kind of role-playing game, tactical combat, and choose your own adventure. In this video we're going to set the historical context, take a look at the components, and give an overview of gameplay. Now Purple Haze focuses on the US military patrol experience during the Vietnam War. These patrols were a critical component of combat operations. Squads or platoons were tasked with gathering intelligence, engaging enemy forces, and securing territory. And operating in dense jungles, rice paddies, and rural villages, patrols faced the constant threat of ambushes, booby traps, and Viet Cong or North Vietnamese encounters. Typical missions included search and destroy operations and reconnaissance to gather information. Soldiers had to navigate challenging terrain, contend with unpredictable weather, and manage the psychological stress of an ever-elusive and resourceful enemy. Patrol actions played a pivotal role in the broader US military strategy, but also highlighted the difficulties in the Vietnam War. The core game in Purple Haze occurs at the squad level, as you lead a group of 6 soldiers over a 9-mission campaign. Let's start with a general overview of gameplay. The box lists 1 to 4 players, and it's important to realize that if you're playing with more than one player, you're all on the same side. This would be a cooperative solo experience. You'd basically be just dividing up these soldiers over the players, so all working together for the same goal. Now the box lists gameplay as 90 to 720 minutes. I assume the 720 is for the campaign. The 9-mission campaign, I would estimate that each mission is probably going to take you an hour or 2 to play. So you'd probably be looking at about 10 to 18 to 20 hours to play the entire campaign. And it goes without saying, this is a game that's occurring at the tactical level. Let's talk a little bit now about the 4 major systems of gameplay and the engine that supports it all. So first up, you've got your campaign element. And this is basically the gameplay that occurs between missions. So leveling up some of your soldiers, kind of rest and recuperation, replacing ones that have been incapacitated and killed, and bringing your unit and gear together to be ready for the next mission. The second element of gameplay is actually kind of the choose your own adventure element of gameplay. We can see in the top right over there is the mission book for mission number 1. We could take a look at that in a moment, but it's 24 pages. You're going to be making decisions and performing tests that your soldiers are going to have to pass or fail. That's going to drive the story in all sorts of different directions. So the third element of gameplay is the mission level, which happens up largely on this left map and on this status board we can see in the very middle of the display here. And for this is where you're going to be moving your squad, making decisions which way to go, whether to rest, and how much energy, monitoring your energy and the threat level. And then from there, that's where you're going to have the trigger of your tactical level combat, which occurs over here underneath this on the tactical level board. And we'll take a closer look at that momentarily. So you've got these 4 systems of gameplay, and they're all fueled by this part right here, which is your squad. We can see the 6 soldiers, we can see their level card, we can see the gear they're carrying in. They all have attributes, and all of the 4 game systems are connected and influenced by these squad members. They have attributes. It's like this is where that RPG element is that basically is the foundation of all the gameplay. Let's take a look at our squad foundation, and the foundation of that is the individual soldier. There are about 30 of these squad member cards in the game. And at the beginning of each campaign, you flip over 3 as you're going through each role in the squad. And there are 6 roles. We'll talk about that momentarily. And you get to pick one of the 3 that you flip over. So I picked Lenny Rowing as our infantryman when that role came up. And we can see there's a lot of information on these different cards. There are 5 attributes for each soldier. So we have the charisma, then intelligence, then willpower, then over here on the top left we have survivability and then perception. And then this 12 rating here is his carrying capacity. Up the top we have the stress and damage thresholds, so the mental stress and then the physical damage that the soldier can take. And then down here we have every soldier has a unique characteristic as well. Now these attributes here on the 2, 3, they're usually 2, 3s, and 4s. And then up here we have 6, 7s, and 8s. So they're within a rather narrow range band. We'll take a look later at how these work together in action. Now, there are 6 members of our squad. There are also 6 roles. And we can see here this little token that's dropped on Lenny here designates the infantryman role, and it's number 3. So with 6 members, you can roll a 6-sided die to randomly select one of your squad members, and that often happens in different combat engagements and parts of gameplay. But let's take a look at the role cards too. So I've zoomed out here on Frenchie and Rasta. This is our scout and our engineer respectively, and we can now see their role cards down below here. There's 6 roles in the squad: squad leader, radio operator, infantryman, scout, engineer, and corpsman, basically your medic. And we can see here also that these have levels. So this is scout level 1, and these are the different skills that this scout at this level has. Now once this scout, or if this scout levels up to level 2, we can see that they've added another function and they get better at their job. And at various points in the mission, the story or the mission execution might ask you to, at a certain position in your squad, to perform certain actions or take certain decisions and make certain tests. And that's where these different attributes come in. So the game again starts to see, you can see how this element of squad and role really helps to drive all of the different connections to the gameplay. And of course, all of these attributes show up in tactical combat as well. Lastly, we can also see that the weapons that the individual soldier can carry is somewhat dictated by their role. So the M79 grenade launcher has to go to the engineer, and then down below we've equipped him with the M79 grenade launcher. And each one of these weapons has different characteristics and different functions and different capacities as well. And so that again connects to role and connects to how well they level up, to how well they can use these different weapons. And then going even further, we can see there's extra ammunition. We've got smoke grenades. Here we have extra rations, a lot of different things that the squad members can carry, all that have to stay within that limit of their carrying capacity. So when you look at this system altogether, you can see it's a very robust role-playing game system that's going to drive all the action in the game. Let's take a look at the mission level of the game. And at the heart of the mission level is this mission map. And this is double-sided. There's a different map on the other side for some of the other missions in the 9-mission campaign. And there's also a mini-map here for urban terrain that shows up in the campaign as well. We can see a number of tokens down here. And basically this is where, again, you're going to be moving your squad and running into various encounters and unique events in each side of each mission. Now, this isn't giving away very much at all. You'll learn this right away. But the goal of the first mission is to get back to base. Your helicopter crashes. You're going to start out here somewhere as your squad. And basically, you've got to navigate this terrain to get back towards your base. Now, you're going to start in one of these quadrants, and we can see they have different types of terrain, and basically moving through this terrain. Now, we also got enemy presence here. As you move closer or into this, you're going to trigger some alerts, which could increase the probability you run into enemy encounters. And then we have these little book icons here. And basically what happens is when you come into one of the squares with the book icon, you're going to flip it over. It's going to designate a number. Now, these are randomized 1, 2, or 3 for the first story. And this is going to key to one of the pages and one of the paragraphs in the unique mission book. And so this is going to dictate the story elements and generate a lot of the unique elements of this particular mission. So we can see for this first mission, there are 3 of them. One of your secondary missions in this first mission is to find out what happened to the other helicopter, because you suspect that crashed as well. And so you're looking for clues as to what could have happened to that other helicopter. And so these elements here I'm taking are going to offer kind of insight and kind of unravel that story as you make your way through this first mission. We can also see over here, this is kind of the mission tracker. This is the time, so we can see this is 11, and the hours designations are up here, and these are the evening hours from 1800 to 5, and then over here are the increments of time in 15 minutes. So as you're moving through this mission map, you're going to be incrementing time and heading towards nightfall and making decisions as to how to best complete your mission in the time allotted for it. We also have down here the stamina level. So in this particular mission, we start at a stamina of 12, and marching through terrain costs stamina based on, as we see here, the type of terrain that's there. So mountainous terrain, if we go through a mountainous terrain grid square, it's going to take us 1 hour to do so. It's going to be really slow, and then it's going to cost us 4 stamina. So we'd move it down here, and we'd make it 12 o'clock. And likewise, other terrains have less impact on stamina. For example, the
Rice paddies in flat terrain, only -1, and they only take 15 minutes. Each grid square, by the way, is about 1 kilometer wide, so to give you kind of a scope on what kind of action is happening in there. And then down here, we have the threat level. So mission 1 starts at a green level. It's a relatively low level of threat. But as you navigate through the terrain or go closer to that known enemy presence, this threat level is going to go up. And as you get into the red zone, you're much more likely to trigger encounters in combat with the enemy. In addition to all the squad system cards, there are a number of other cards in Purple Haze. These are encounter cards, which could trigger in their mission dependent, as well as having a few general ones. One of the ones, for example, I'm going to show this one. It's a spoiler of 1 on a level to 10. You could run into a booby trap, and it may or may not be in your mission. That would make sense. It's Vietnam, right? So I don't think I'm spoiling too much. But this is going to basically dictate, again, how you resolve that encounter using the skills and attributes of your squad. And each mission is going to have a different set of these unique encounter cards. There are also 2 types of severe damage cards, if you would. Physical damage and psychological or stress damage. When a soldier reaches their physical damage limit, so 6, 7, or 8 because of accumulated damage over the course of a mission, then they're going to attach one of these wound cards to them. This is a flesh wound, so the lightest of the variety. They could be all the way up to a KIA. There is 1 KIA card in the deck, so it can get very serious. And these represent long-lasting conditions that are going to carry over from mission to mission unless you get them treated. Likewise, stress accumulates on soldiers over the course of numerous missions. If you hit your stress level, then you take one of these stress cards, which also have a range of severity. This would be a severe condition. And these create impacts that are going to add to your soldier over the course of multiple missions until you alleviate them. We also have boon cards. These are benefits that it can attach to a soldier, giving them kind of special abilities or short-term actions that they can take to increase their reactions or their responses to certain situations in combat. Most of these are expendable. You burn them up when you use them. Lastly, I'm not going to show these, but there are some luck cards. I don't want to give away the spoilers, but this is an element of a very good thing that can happen to your squad that sticks with your squad long-term over the course of a campaign. So a number of ways that cards interact with gameplay. The element of gameplay parallel to the mission execution are the mission storybooks. There are 9 of them, as we can see here. So here's 1, 2, patrol, 3, recon patrol. Then we have search, sweep, convoy, Tet offensive. There are 9 of these altogether, and each of these are substantial works of literature. So this first one here is 24 pages. It's got the objectives, it's got a special setup for the mission, and this is also the first one in the mission, so how you start your campaign. It's got some story elements in the background to kind of set the context of the mission. And then in here we can see these numbered paragraphs, and I don't want to go too much in detail on these, but these are basically kind of a choose your own adventure that are often attribute test dependent. So you're going to perform a test with the soldier, and that's going to dictate how your choice actually turned out. And this is going to kind of weave your way through here. We can also see, if we go a little bit farther in here, there are ways that these can trigger combat situations, and these are the setups for particular combat elements. So depending upon your choices and depending upon the success or failure of your squad actions, you could lead into more combat or a kind of escape without combat. So all kinds of different story elements in here. And this, again, for this first one, you're trying to get back to base, but you're also trying to find out the fate of the other helicopter. So this is that story there. Each one of the 9 missions is unique and rather substantial as you're going through. So I think in terms of this, the first time through these stories are really going to be a treat. Since we're on the topic of documentation, there's also 3 other big chunks here. A very nice and handy set of player aids that guide you through a lot of times sequence of play-wise. I found these really helpful for executing missions. And then a Marine's Handbook, which is a good kind of lighter introduction to the rulebook, and then a 62-page rulebook that's got a ton of graphics and a ton of information, everything broken down. I found this to be quite good in terms of explaining how to execute the game and how to play the game. So we looked at the mission story element, we've looked at the mission execution element. The campaign element of gameplay, there's really not much to see. You just kind of run through a quick procedure between missions. So the last thing to look at is the tactical element. I just wanted to show a quick setup of a hypothetical combat situation to give a taste of what that would look like. we have in the middle here is the heart of the tactical combat board, which has got the North Vietnamese forces up on the top and the US forces down on the south. Each one of these tokens represents an individual soldier, and we can see for the US, they're keyed to those individual squad members. So Rowing, who is our infantryman with this symbol and was number 3, this represents him in terms of the battle. And up here we have the North Vietnamese forces again, each one of which is an individual soldier, and some of which have more elite skills than others. Now, combat happens in alternating rounds based on this initiative track. So whichever side has the initiative track, green for the US and red for the North Vietnamese, whichever side has the initiative track, it's their turn to go. And combat here, it's a simplified tactical combat system, if I might say so myself. So what happens when the North Vietnamese fire is you're going to aggregate their firepower and then divide hits out over the US forces in one execution of North Vietnamese combat. Then when the US goes, you're going to pick one of your soldiers for the most part, and each soldier is going to perform 2 actions. Once each soldier in your squad activates and has gone through their set of actions, the combat ends. So it's a kind of a, if you would, it's a little bit of an abstract combat system based on the skills of your soldiers and the strength of the North Vietnamese soldiers to kind of assess damage to both sides. Now, ideally, again, you want to be tilting this initiative as one side builds up casualties. It's going to increase the initiative for your side. There can be special tactics that the North Vietnamese can use. And there's quite a bit more subtlety to it in terms of smoke grenades and frag grenades and different weapons that you're using and how you use your weapons. So it's not a simple system, but it is designed so that you don't get tangled up into a tactical encounter that's going to take you an hour or 2 hours to resolve. You're going to be going back and forth, and then once each of your US soldiers has executed and activated, combat's over, and those are the results of the exchange, simulating kind of a breaking off of combat. All in all, to me, it seems a good compromise between too heavy of a tactical system to bog down your campaign, and yet a system that's going to give you realistic results, what it would be like in terms of particular encounters. And the last thing to mention is there are a lot of tokens to kind of keep track of everything. This is for experience. These are for physical wounds, stress wounds, some extra rations in here, a lot of dice for the combat system. In the next video, I'll show how this works. This is for cover over here. There's quite a bit of those. And then a lot of the unique tokens designating how the missions evolve as they go forward, both on the tactical board, and then some markers for your soldiers as they kind of gain experience and move forward. So there you have it, a brief overview of Purple Haze and some of its gameplay elements. I'm going to create a video that shows some of these elements in action. I'll put a link to that as soon as it's ready. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great day.